Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, 3 episodes this week, and then I will not be back until, I believe, January 6th. That's when I plan on returning with the next show. During that time, there may or may not be a couple of war videos, sort of sporadic throughout, but let me get going here on this particular episode. I want to start with this. Just very quickly, I find the Twitter area and the platform of Twitter these days to be fascinating. I know it's not a free speech platform. I've been over that before on the show, all the different examples as to why that's, of course, the case. However, it does beg the question, if the bad guys were really in control of what's going on right now, certainly to a great extent and a social media extent, why on earth would they allow the number of things to be said on X that they would never allow previously? More specifically, I'm talking about World War II history, Adolf Hitler's speeches, endless memes, again, describing real Jewish history, connections between Jews and communism, and how, of course, they created communism, all of this. This is factual information, and historically factual information that would have been suppressed in the past. And at the exact same time, there are endless X spaces, so to speak, and conversations that are taking place between complete strangers in an open forum about such subjects, which I find just to be incredible. And I love it. I mean, it's great. All of that information sharing is beyond valuable. So again, if X was really as bad as people claim, and again, it's not a free speech platform in the sense that you can't call somebody a particular name or you can't use particular words from time to time. That, again, is a problem. But the conversations, again, that are taking place in an open forum here, again, regarding accurate history and endless other subjects, I think is absolutely great. And again, it's just one of those things where I think about it and I fall back on it and I say to myself again, this would have never been allowed in the past, but it's happening now. And then, of course, it begs the question, why? And I don't think, again, that Elon Musk is solely responsible for what's going on. I think there are other forces at play here that are allowing these kinds of conversations to take place in order to wake people up on numerous subjects. Either way, it just continues to be sort of one of those reminders where, again, I think to myself that there's something else going on. No doubt about it. Now, of course, there's the whole drone thing and the drone talk. Again, I'm not that concerned with it. There's a lot of different takes out there. Some people, again, are saying that it's a giant military security operation that's taking place. Some people are saying, they're looking for, missile warheads and all this other stuff. Some people are saying that bad guys are being tracked, and that's why that's taking place. Again, a lot of other individuals are also saying that it's a part of a larger sort of government takeover and an infringement on civil liberties, that they're going to do whatever they have to do to draft law and keep drones out of citizens' hands so they can no longer use them anymore. In fact, if you bounce over to the Q boards and you type in drones in the search box, there's 2 posts that pop up. They are back-to-back posts, post 593 and 594. On January 26th of 2018, and it just says, drones over U.S., tracking only. And then 594 says the same thing, except it has a little box below where it says tracking only. So, again, not sure what to believe with all of it. I'm not that concerned with it. It's certainly a distraction for a great deal of people. People are shooting fireworks at them. People are shooting bullets at them. Donald Trump's even said shoot him out of the sky. Again, I don't know what to believe with any of it. It seems a bit strange. There's no doubt about it. Of course, it's a psychological operation to some extent because endless news agencies are reporting on it on a constant basis. People, unfortunately, are bringing up the whole alien thing again. Some people, again, are implying that this is the setup for, again, a one-world government, that they're going to blame some alien invasion or some explosion on the drones and that it's aliens doing it and all this other nonsense. Again, I'm really not concerned with it, really don't care. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. Again, I'm not dismissing it because I don't know anything about it. I'm dismissing it because it just doesn't concern me. That's essentially where I come out on this. So, yeah, there's all of that. Moving on now. I want to spend a minute on this. I found this interesting, and just to kind of refresh people's minds if they're unaware, this is sort of the time of year where I watch college football, and it's the only sport that I'll watch, and it's the only time of year when I'll watch it. Other than that, again, I don't watch TV and I don't watch sports. But I find the college football stuff interesting basically for two reasons. Number one, in our family for, I'd say, 3 generations, we've been gambling on bowl games. And there's a way that we do it, which is kind of interesting if anybody out there is interested in playing this particular game. But it's kind of an easy way to gamble on bowl games, and you don't have to know anything. And of course, it doesn't take any brains to do this. The way that we play it is everybody throws in $1 per game, and we'll usually gamble across maybe 12 or some odd games. And again, it's a decent amount of money, but then you end up drawing numbers out of a hat. Every number from 0 to 9. So you write each individual number on a small piece of paper, and then you crumple it up and you toss it into a hat. And everybody basically picks one number that's assigned to them for one specific game. And then for the next game, everybody redraws all over again. The number that you receive has to be the last digit of the combined score of both teams at the end of the game. I should also specify, too, that we end up picking the numbers 0 through 9. So again, you write 0 on a piece of paper, crumple it up, throw it in a hat, all the way up to the number 9. And because there are 7 of us, that means that there's a chance, of course, that 3 of the numbers are not going to be picked. If the total of the last digit of the sum of the final score doesn't add up to a number that we actually have, and it's one of the 3 numbers that are just roaming around there freely, then it's a push. So all of the $7 for that one particular game just go into the next game, which means, again, if there's a winner for that next game, that person gets, $14. So again, it's a fun way of doing it. So say, for example, I draw the number 3. That means that, say, for example, the final score is 20 to 23. When you combine those, of course, those last digits of those 2 scores, 3 is the sum total. 3 plus 0 is 3. So because I have 3, then I would win. Say, for example, again, the score is 15 to 17 as the final score. You take the 7 from the 17, the 5 from the 15, you add 7 plus 5. That, of course, gives you 12. 2 then being the last digit in that total. So then whoever has the number 2 wins. Again, it takes any skill gambling out of it, basically. You don't have to watch sports, you don't have to pay attention to it. It's totally random, and that's just kind of the way that we do it around here. Anyway, now, with all of that aside, and the gambling aside, watching these bowl games and certainly, again, analyzing the commercials and everything else that's going on during this particular time is beyond fascinating to me. Because, again, you get a dose of how bad our culture actually is. Yes, there's the rigging of the football games, of course, and all of it's, all of it's rigged to basically bend in one direction or another, bad calls here, bad calls there. But there are numerous commercials, of course, that are beyond abominations that take place during these bowl games as well. And of course, all the political campaigns that you'll see, and again, the advertising on the fields and a number of other things. For example, just the other day I was watching a game, sort of the tail end of a game, and it said, "Don't wait, vaccinate," right behind the goalposts on the side of the wall. Again, this Don't Wait, Vaccinate campaign came around approximately in 2021, and it still exists. Even after all of the truth that exists out there, frankly, it was even in the summer of 2020 when the Don't Wait, Vaccinate campaign started to get rolling. Again, the timing is not an accident, but the fact that it still exists, even today, is beyond disgusting. The other thing, too, just to refresh people's minds, which was beyond odd also, is back during college football, certainly in 2021, they were telling everybody to stay away from stadiums and large gatherings if you were not vaccinated. Now, knowing what we know now, and knowing, of course, what some of us knew back then, it was a specific ploy to not only get people vaccinated, but get vaccinated people around one another, in an effort, again, to keep the unvaccinated away from the vaccinated and the vaccinated away from the unvaccinated. Because remember, in their fairy tale land, they believe that the unvaccinated are somehow quote-unquote super spreaders of illness, and that the vaccinated are somehow immune or protected, when in fact, the exact opposite was true. So what they were actually doing was encouraging individuals again to inject themselves with a biological weapon for the purpose of a high rate of transmissibility from vaccinated to vaccinated, to only increase the likelihood of the vaccinated shedding on the vaccinated in large settings, like stadiums. Again, this is still something that's going on. Now, one of the observations I remember making a year ago with a lot of these college football games, and certainly even the year before that, and these bowl games specifically, which are really the only games that I watch, is that the crowd size in almost all of these bowl games was next to zero. There were hardly any people in the crowds. Now, unfortunately, I think the crowds have gotten a little bit bigger because people are being sucked back into the matrix, which is terrible. But that right there, again, is one of these observations that I like to write down and I just like to make when I watch some of these games, is I try to gauge, again, the crowd size, and then, of course, the advertisements, the product placement, and all that other kind of stuff. Again, I like to observe these kinds of things because I find them fascinating, because it's interesting to see whether or not anybody's actually learning anything. And unfortunately, it seems that people are not learning. So, with that said, and with all of that aside for just a second, I found myself watching the Heisman Trophy presentation. Again, something I don't watch, but I happened to watch it just the other night. And I was watching these four individuals, again, quote-unquote student athletes, get up there, again, with their families, so to speak, and start to, again, talk with the ESPN people about, their college career and what they've accomplished and this, that, and the other. Now, again, I had no idea who had been nominated. I didn't even know who was in any of these bowl games. I didn't know any of that. But as I was watching it, I thought, okay, these four people apparently got chosen. Of the four that got chosen, two of them, if I'm not mistaken, are actually in the college football playoff. The running back from Boise State and the quarterback from Oregon. It was even said that the quarterback from Oregon, again, who was nominated for the Heisman, openly said in previous interviews that the running back for Boise State should win the Heisman Trophy. He had the best year of any running back in the entire nation. He broke endless records, yards, touchdowns, the whole thing. Thousands of yards, 29 some odd touchdowns, arguably one of the best running backs ever to play college football in a season. And then you had a quarterback from the University of Miami who had the best records at that school as a quarterback ever in school history. And then you had Travis Hunter, who plays both offense and defense for Colorado. And at the exact same time, of course, this is the same school where Deion Sanders is the coach. Now, of all of those teams, Deion's team, Colorado, has the worst record. They had 3 losses. I think everybody else either had 2, 1 loss, or no losses, somewhere along those lines. As this was all playing out and transpiring, again, just observing this, okay? Again, it was very strange. 3 out of the 4 individuals were talking with both of their, again, they're one Hawaiian and then the rest are black. They were all talking with the nominee, the Heisman Trophy nominee, and both of their biological parents as they were all on stage with, again, their child. Again, you're seeing all of this transpire, and then it gets to be Travis Hunter's turn to get on stage and be interviewed briefly, and who goes up on stage with him? It isn't any family member. It isn't a mom, a dad, a grandma, an aunt, a grandpa, a brother, a sister, none of that. It's him, Deion Sanders, and Deion Sanders' son. So it's his coach and then a teammate of his. And they, of course, were all on the same team at Jackson State and, before Colorado and whatever else. So I'm watching this and I'm saying to myself, well, why isn't his mom on stage? His mom is apparently in the crowd. And he has a grandma who was in the crowd too, but why are they not on stage with him? It seems a bit odd. And right then and there I thought to myself, oh my God, he's going to win. They're going to give him the Heisman Trophy. And then I thought, okay, why? Why are they going to give him the Heisman Trophy? He doesn't have the best statistics of the other players based on the other players. Again, of all of the players, it was the running back for Boise State who had the best overall statistics as an individual player. Now, yes, again, Travis Hunter played on both sides of the football, so they openly said, well, he had more snaps and he was on the field longer than any other college football player and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, that's fine. He wasn't even first in yards. I don't think he wasn't first in touchdowns. He wasn't first in interceptions. But either way, it was just the setup. It was just the sheer setup. And then they again showed the crowd. And he's sitting in the front row with the people that he's with. And you go down the line of people that he's with, and it is him, his fiance. Keep in mind, by the way, in particular, Travis Hunter, he's a multimillionaire. I mean, these guys make money playing college football, copious amounts of cash. Certainly him. Again, he's tied to Deion Sanders. There's a lot of promotion there. There's a lot of name recognition, I guess, and association and whatever else. But at the exact same time, when you went down the line, again, it was Travis Hunter, his fiance, his mother, and then it was Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, Lil Wayne. Can't even believe I have to say that. The rapper was there. Again, not sure why. And then another coach of his was apparently there. It was like a circus. It was like looking at a circus. Everybody else is with nothing but family. But then you look at him and you're saying to yourself, okay, fiance, mom, football coach, somebody from the entertainment industry, and then another coach, and then that's it. It just looked like, it was just odd. So anyway, after all of that, again, everybody gets done talking with one another. They go back to their seats, and then they bring up all the previous winners of the Heisman Trophy, with, of course, Archie Griffin being the only one who won it twice, apparently, and it's pretty evident they don't want that to ever happen again, which is why they pick certain people over others, because they want to make sure that, again, one person gets it and somebody might not get it 2 years in a row. Kind of like the Boise State running back. This guy, theoretically, again, should have won this time, and he could win it next year. Who's to say? But either way, they all get up there on stage. They do the whole thing. Guy comes out from the back from some committee, reads the winner. Travis Hunter wins. He gets up there, hardly speaks English, bless his heart, and then he ends up again thanking his family members, and they go, and then he starts thanking his mom, and it's like, oh, his mom's in the crowd. Well, we didn't really know that beforehand, but now again they're talking to his mom in the audience, and then apparently his grandmother is in the nosebleed section. She was sitting way up high, and she didn't even look very old. So clearly these individuals had kids at a very young age. But again, she was up in the nosebleed section with other family members apparently and other people. And then, of course, he was thanking his dad, who wasn't there. Shocking. And again, I don't know if the guy's been to jail or not, or what the deal is. But again, he was crying on stage and doing whatever he's doing. And then, I don't know, it was just, the whole thing was weird. But when his name got called, if you looked at everybody's faces, and you're good at reading people's faces, everybody almost on stage looked like, oh my God, I can't believe he won. But then they thought to themselves, no, we understand why he won. And it isn't because he was necessarily the best player per se. It was because Travis Hunter checks every DEI box that you could possibly imagine. Now, you may have heard earlier this week that Caitlin Clark, the WNBA player, also apparently bent the knee to the woke mob and fell for the whole DEI thing eventually, because they've been wearing on her for a long time to do that. Bend the knee to the woke mob, and eventually we'll take you in and you'll become one of us. So she apparently did that earlier this week with some comments that she apparently made. And oddly enough, again, this has been a subject that's being debated even on CNN back and forth. And, I don't really care, and I'm not sure why. But what's odd about the so-called woke mob, and it really is a satanic trick, is they wear on people to basically become political. They say they don't want to. They say that they don't want to. They say that they're not about race. They're just about their sport. That's all they care about, whatever else. But then the woke mob again and the satanic media apparatus just continues to wear on these people, and then eventually they break and they end up making some pro-woke comment, and then they again end up getting stabbed in the back along the way, because again the entire thing was just a trick all along. But with the Travis Hunter pick, it's beyond odd but very stereotypical, because again he checked every single DEI box imaginable. Again, an absent father, parents who weren't on stage, broken home, broken family. He openly admitted to being in trouble as a youth on a constant basis. Gave his life over to football. He did thank God at the beginning of his speech, which was refreshing, and we assume he's talking about Jesus Christ. But with that said, he was just the one of the others that checked every single DEI box that, again, the satanic Jewish lobby certainly enjoys and wants to help promote. Again, nobody else had a rapper sitting next to them. It was their parents. But with this guy, again, it was a rapper. And, of course, Deion Sanders, who has no problem finding a camera any chance that he can, and finding, of course, an opportunity to be in a commercial, basically, any chance that he can, too. But again, the observation that I made had to do with the looks on everybody's faces when they called his name. Everybody looked like they knew there was a chance that he could win, but he didn't deserve it. That again, the running back from Boise State clearly had the stats. He clearly had the work ethic. His team outperformed Colorado's. So why on earth would you pick a player on a worse team of all of the teams that were represented there and have that individual again be the Heisman Trophy winner? I understand it's about individual accolades and individual statistics, I suppose, but even so, the looks on everybody's faces were astounding. Even, again, the old winners on stage, they looked like they didn't want Travis Hunter to win. They all looked like they almost wanted the running back from Boise State to win. It was just kind of like this, he won. It was just a very odd mood in the room. And again, I'm watching it on a TV and I'm just going, this is strange. This just feels odd. But again, my gut intuition on it is probably pretty accurate. And the fact is that again, he checked every DEI box. The woke mob is still fully in charge of sport. The whole thing is rigged, no doubt about it. We know that there's endless gambling that takes place with Heisman picks. Who's going to win? Put your money on this person, that person, or whatever else. And then, a particular decision gets made, and then, of course, people end up winning copious amounts of money depending on who they betted on. But even so, I mean, the entire sports arena is wrapped up in betting. I mean, they promote betting now. And as I've said again, even a year ago, in some of those episodes from a year ago, this right here should prove to people that sports are rigged, that the entire award ceremonies are completely rigged, that the Heisman Trophy is rigged. There's no way that they're not. It was just, I don't know. I'm not going to drag on too much longer on this. I just wanted to remind people that this right here, again, should be proof to people that the entire thing is fixed. There's too many hands in the cookie jar here. There's too much money being moved around. They have to do whatever they have to do to promote not only the winner and the individual, but the school, the people associated with the school. Again, it throws Deion Sanders back into the mix. Again, I just continue to be shocked that people watch this at face value and believe what they're seeing. and they don't stop and question the motives or the people involved or anything that's actually happening with it. Again, this was a line of work, so to speak, college football, colleges, universities in general, that were pushing their players to receive these shots. And Deion Sanders, of course, is jabbed to the bone and falling apart. Amputated toes, chunks of his legs gone, multiple blood clots, nanotech blood clots throughout his body, the whole thing. But again, it puts him at the forefront as if to say he's fine, don't worry, nothing bad will happen to him. Again, it's just beyond odd to me. But like I said, it checks every DEI box you could possibly imagine, and these people haven't learned. I would go so far as to say they're doubling down on their diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. They truly are. And again, like I said earlier, they have no problem promoting the vaccinations, which of course are not vaccines. All vaccines are bioweapons, but they have no problem not learning from their own mistakes. They are doubling down on all of these agendas. And this right here, again, is just one of the observations that I plan on making here in the next couple of weeks. During some of these games, again, I'm not expecting them to change, but I just want to see how much I can actually tolerate. And then, of course, just see what lengths these individuals and these groups and organizations and corporations will go to in order to, again, try to cover their tracks and just normalize this nonsense. It truly is hypnosis. It really is. Again, people can name the coaches of every single team that exists right now, regardless of the sport. But again, you ask them a historic event and whether or not something really happened or it didn't, and they have no clue. It just really, I just find it beyond fascinating what people put their time and effort into and what they don't. It really is alarming. So yeah. Anyway, with that said, I just plan on taking a few notes throughout some of these games and just making some odd observations. And again, please feel free and email me if you have some of these weird observations as well. I mean, again, I'm going to be paying attention to the wireless body area network commercials and how much of these commercials, again, are pushing the Oura rings and the Apple Watches and all that stuff. I mean, I know it's pretty much ubiquitous and it's pretty much everywhere. But even so, I think it needs to be brought up certainly here on this show because this is a subject that I discuss and a subject that I write about and one that I think is, again, immensely important. Either way, enough of that for now. Yeah, I'll come back in January, of course, at the beginning of January, and bring some updates maybe as to some of the observations that I made. I'm sure I'm going to make plenty of odd ones. There's no doubt about it. Again, these people aren't learning. That really is the most disappointing part in all of this. They're not even walking away from their bad ideas that got a lot of people killed and get a lot of people hurt. And I know that they're in the business of killing and they're in the business of hypnosis. And unfortunately, their business is pretty good right now. So there's that. Okay. I've got one huge education story for you. And I've known about this now for approximately a week. And it was actually brought to my attention by an employee of this very school who was a guest on this show. Now, you may recall that I had, again, a guest on the show who teaches in the Houston ISD school district in Houston, Texas. This particular, again, this school district, just to refresh everyone's memory, is bankrupt. Certainly financially, they're bankrupt morally. Their scores were in the tank. Their student attendance was in the tank, the whole thing. Again, high Hispanic population, high African American population. Not the greatest place to go to school, and that's putting it mildly, I think. With that said, I'm going to play a quick little audio here from a local news outlet regarding a story that took place with one of their students who was hit by a train walking to school and was killed. They were walking on the tracks, apparently, with regard to a slow-moving train coming in their direction. They tripped, they fell, and then they got crushed by the train. Now again, why would you walk on the train tracks when there's a train coming? And why would you do it as the train is heading toward you? No idea. Again, people were asking lots of questions like, well, was he wearing earbuds? Did he not see the train? Did he not hear the train? Well, first of all, the student who passed away was 15 years old. His name was Sergio Rodriguez. And the fact is he wasn't blind, handicapped, or in a wheelchair or anything else. He was just stupid. That's it. He was just stupid, and he crossed the train tracks with a train coming, and he got hit, and he got crushed, and he got killed. End of story. You would think that would be the end of it. But this right here again, I think, exemplifies the entire problem with our society. And as I brought it up in a previous episode, the business of dissociative disorders, and individuals, again, just closing their mouths, closing their eyes, and closing their ears, and not wanting to say what the real problem is, and then rationalizing endless excuses and blaming endless people as to why something terrible happens. This right here, I think, proves it. So let me play this audio from this local news station first, and then I'll come back with some more updated information that I've heard from one of their employees in this school district who, again, has really observed and witnessed a great deal of very odd and unprofessional behaviors and a number of other things. So first of all, give this local news outlet regarding this story a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Now to that deadly train accident that took the life of a Milby High School student on Monday. Sergio Rodriguez was just 15 years old.
Witnesses say he tripped while he was trying to cross the railroad tracks that sits right between his home and his school. Tonight, we have learned that HISD is offering to pay for the funeral and to help the family with the student's funeral preparations and the cost. So we also know that earlier today, Mayor John Whitmire has pledged to work with local, state, and federal officials to have a skyway built over those railroad tracks by the school so something like this doesn't happen again. And then Milby High School parents, we spoke with one of them. They have started a petition to remove the Milby principal. They say that she lacked compassion after this deadly accident, and she doesn't show any empathy necessary to lead the education of their children. So we have made team coverage on this story all day long. Let's begin with Devin Clark right now. He talked with former and current students who say this train track has always been a problem in their neighborhood.
The memorial you see right behind me has at least doubled in size since we got here earlier, much of it a testament to the love classmates had for Sergio. But behind these heartfelt mementos is also a desperate plea for change to happen right in this very spot where he lost his life.
Every day when we used to walk to class together, I used to talk to him at lunch. Obviously, when I heard the news, it was horrible.
Diego Noyola showed up to this memorial by himself today, but he is in no way alone in his grief for a well-loved teenager gone too soon.
It's kind of difficult because, someone passed away and their family is in grief.
That someone, 15-year-old 10th grade Milby High School junior varsity football player, Sergio Rodriguez.
I cried, my mom cried, we cried together.
Witnesses say Rodriguez tripped and was hit by a slow-moving train while trying to cross the track yesterday morning on his way to Milby High School. With the school being right across the street from the tracks, students are hoping Union Pacific finds better long-term safety solutions.
We like to change the schedules because sometimes when we come to school, the train just stops and we have to jump over it.
How many times have you had to do that?
Just one.
One could have been one too many, though.
Yeah.
Jorge Pineda says 12 years ago he went to Milby High School, and he remembers having to also risk his safety to get to class on time.
That's kind of what made me touch about this story today. I used to do that. I could have been him.
Pineda, who is in barber school, says he rounded up several others to cut hair for donations that will be given to Rodriguez's family.
We're going to have 5 barbers there. We're trying to do our best for the night to donate whatever we can for the cause.
Meanwhile, the Houston Independent School District officials who held a press conference clarified the school's tardy policy.
If a train is running during school time, all tardies are waived and do not count against students or teachers.
As mentioned earlier, a lot of the frustration has been directed towards the Milby High School principal, who was criticized for not canceling school following the tragedy. A Change.org position has already accumulated around 1,000 signatures, aiming to have her removed from that position. Meanwhile, Union Pacific only offering hearts and condolences, but so far, no solution for addressing this glaring problem. Reporting on the east side, Devin Clark, KPRC 2 News.
Again, I can take this in a million directions, and I'm going to try to. Again, no one said the one thing that they should have said, which is, why did he cross the tracks with a train coming? Is he retarded? Is there something else going on here that we didn't know? Was he high? Was he drunk? What's happening with him? And then, of course, well, this has been a long-standing problem, this particular train track right through the center of town, just like this, and right in front of this school, and it's always a problem, and whatever. A problem for what? Regarding what? Do high school students get run over all the time? Again, it's beyond strange. And then, of course, the change.org survey, or petition rather, to get the principal of this building, who was, again, selected by an outside group to show up to this particular high school to be their principal, to, again, implement more government tyranny from an education standpoint on the entire environment, which they have been doing, in order to get them fired as if they were responsible for this kid crossing the train tracks with a train coming through. Again, none of it connects. None of it. The other interesting part about this, an odd part, is that this particular principal, whose name is Ruth Pena, again, Milby High School principal Ruth Pena, that apparently this individual is quite the bully. And again, quite the sort of tyrannical school leader, so to speak. Bullies staff members, bullies lots of different people. And the irony, of course, is that all of that doesn't get her in trouble as being unprofessional, unethical, and a number of other things. But it's a random student who happens to attend that particular school where she's the principal, gets hit and run over by a train, and now everybody's just blaming her again like she had something to do with it. Again, the mother started this petition on change.org. And the mother's name is Maria Rodriguez. And I want to read this to you because, again, it's just beyond odd. It says, petition for the removal of Principal Ruth Pena from Milby High School. Again, why? Because she didn't take the day off after the kid got killed? You have to keep this in mind, too, before I read this, that this is a school with low attendance. I mean, they have attendance problems. One of their employees, again, who was a guest on the show, openly told me, they said, look, a lot of these students just don't even show up. And shortly after this happened, a bunch of, at least 100 some odd students were just standing around in the atrium of the school refusing to go into class. And they actually had to get police officers and resource officers and other staff members to shoo them all into class. Again, I'm shocked they go, but even so, if you're going to show up to the building and then just stand around and do nothing, why are you even there? Anyway, it's just beyond odd. And the other thing that, again, people have to keep in mind with these kinds of schools, in particular ones that get taken over by the state, is that in almost any circumstance, regardless of the circumstance, the state tells every administrator in the district to have school as often as humanly possible. To not take days off if you don't have to, and certainly do whatever you have to do to not take days off. That's usually sort of behind-the-scenes procedure when it comes to state-run schools. Again, certainly the ones that have been taken over by the state because of all of the problems that they have. So anyway, here's what the petition says. Again, petition for the removal of Principal Ruth Pena from Milby High School. It says, the Milby High School community is grieving. On December 9th, 2024, we tragically lost a beloved student in a devastating railroad accident just across the street from our school. In the wake of this heartbreaking event, our principal, Ruth Pena, chose to proceed with the school day as if nothing had happened, disregarding the immense grief that enveloped our student body. Her response, utterly tone-deaf and lacking in compassion, was a clear sign of her failure to lead with the empathy and care that students deserve, especially during times of crisis. Now, I'll tell you something. I don't disagree with that. I really don't. They should have canceled school. But again, at the same time, you're talking about a student who was hit by a train, and then you're going to cancel school, and then what? Those students are all going to walk home right over top of the train tracks again where the kid just got crushed. There's probably still brain matter everywhere. Again, not to be too graphic, but I mean, then what? It's a lose-lose situation is basically my point. And during moments like this, everybody's looking for someone to blame, and usually the person who gets blamed is somebody who had nothing to do with it. Again, no one's saying that this kid was a dumbass. Nobody's saying, like, again, what are you doing crossing the train tracks? Again, I went to school with a kid who dove into a creek that was, he dove headfirst into a creek that was something like 6 or 8 inches deep with water. Broke his neck, paralyzed from the neck down, feeding tube, the whole thing. He's probably dead now, but even so, I mean, there is natural selection. I mean, that is something that happens. Again, not trying to be uncompassionate here. I'm just saying that stupidity is stupidity any way you slice it. It goes on, it says, leadership in a school requires more than administrative competence. It demands a deep commitment to the well-being of students. A principal must provide emotional support, recognize the gravity of moments like this, and help the community process trauma. However, under Ms. Pena's leadership, Milby High School has witnessed not only a lack of support during difficult times, but also unjust treatment of students in need. This tragic incident has exposed a deeper issue, her inability to manage the school in a way that promotes the safety, respect, and emotional health of students. Again, she's a chronic bully, so that doesn't surprise me either. But it says this failure is not an isolated incident. According to the National Education Association, empathetic leadership is essential to the emotional well-being of students, which in turn impacts their academic success. Yet here at Milby, empathy has been conspicuously absent from Principal Pena's leadership style. Her failure to acknowledge the grief of students or to offer the support needed in this time of loss is not just a poor judgment call, it's a fundamental misstep in her role as an educator and leader. Again, I don't disagree with that. She's an idiot. That's par for the course, frankly, but at the exact same time, the kid was an idiot too. So, yeah, I don't know. Stupid is as stupid does, I guess. It says, we, the students, alum, and concerned members of the Milby High School community demand that Principal Ruth Pena be removed from her position. Her actions or lack thereof demonstrate that she is not fit to lead our school, and we deserve a leader who values empathy, demonstrates competence, and prioritizes the well-being of every student. It says, we call upon the school board to review Ms. Pena's conduct and take immediate action to replace her with a leader who can guide us through challenging times with the care, compassion, and professionalism we deserve. Our school deserves better. Let us ensure that this disregard for our grief and welfare is never repeated. Join us in demanding change by signing this petition, share the QR code, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. In this particular case, people were also, of course, blaming Union Pacific, and that the family of the kid who was stupid enough to stand on the tracks and walk across the tracks as a train was coming through, that they're going to be suing Union Pacific by again claiming that they didn't do everything that they were supposed to do, like honk their horn, flash their lights, and whatever else. Again, you would think that most humans would see a train coming, and it was a slow-moving train. Well, he tripped, and he fell, and then he got crushed. That means that quite literally that quickly, he saw the train, made a bad decision, and then died. And it probably happened again that fast. He didn't get his legs stuck and was watching this slow-moving train, come at him 100 yards at a time. I mean, it had to have been rather quick. But again, you heard them say, well, we got to make sure that this never happens again, so we'll have a giant bridge that crosses it so that everybody, again, can walk over top of the bridge. I mean, again, what happened to crossing the street and looking both ways? I mean, what happened to that? What happened to get off the train tracks when a train's coming through? Nobody's taking personal responsibility. Therein lies, again, the biggest issue with this whole story and the problem with our society. Nobody's saying my son was a dumbass. I taught him better than that. I don't know what he was thinking. He shouldn't have done that. He paid the price. Don't other people make the same mistake? Stop crossing train tracks when trains are going through. When you cross the road, look both ways, and then look again. Again, this is basic stuff. Again, he was a big dude. He was a football player. He wasn't handicapped in any way. It's just beyond odd. But again, when it rains, it pours in these school environments. And I'm telling you what, this right here again continues to change the entire dynamic of the actual profession and the position of an administrator because of all of the different plates that they have to spin. They're not just managers of adults who work in the building and making sure that everybody's following the law and doing their job and their contractual obligation and all of that. But if a kid gets killed in an accident outside of school, somehow it's the principal's job to manage something having to do with that death. Again, the rationalization just seems to know no bounds here. Again, it even said in the story that the Houston mayor wants Union Pacific to, again, help pay for a bridge. Well, why? I mean, why? Wouldn't Union Pacific just look at them and say, look both ways before you cross our train tracks? Why is this a difficult thing? And as you probably, again, heard in the story there, one of the excuses that's been levied against the school principal and the district as a whole is their tardy policy. That if a train is going through and it holds up students, as a result of, again, a train going through, then their tardies are waived. That no one is marked as being, again, late. So what's the problem then? Because the excuse that was, again, levied is that he was in a hurry and he didn't want to be late, which is why he crossed the train tracks when a train was coming through. And then, of course, the principal has a habit of yelling at students for being late, and he didn't want to get yelled at again because he didn't want to be late, and that's, again, why he got crushed by the train. I just can't believe that anybody's believing this. Again, not a single person in the entire story said, yeah, he made a huge mistake, a life-altering one at that, and the end. Everybody needs somebody to blame, apparently, and everybody needs somebody to pay for it. In fact, let me mention this too. This is not related to the Houston School District and the death of that student, but it has to do, again, with the rationalization that individuals participate in, again, when it comes to their own participation in American schooling. In this local Facebook group that I'm a part of here, which, again, didn't necessarily want to be, but I am, you talk about a social experiment of people's opinions on certain matters and just the lack of brains that actually exist. There was an individual over here who made a particular post. Again, this is a local issue, but it'll show you, again, the depth of the lack of thinking that's actually taking place here. Here's what they said with their post. Again, this was just from December 13th. They said, Marshall parents, again, Marshall is an elementary school here in town. They said, for your information, my third grade son and a little girl found a bullet in their class and surprised there was no communication. I went to speak with Mrs. Jones, the school principal, this morning, who has informed me that she doesn't feel the need to communicate this with parents. And there were 60 some odd comments that were associated with this. A lot of the comments basically say, it doesn't matter, it's not that big of a deal, who cares? And then other people say, the exact opposite. They basically lose their minds and say, this is something that should always be communicated. There are school shootings and bullets are a threat and we don't know why it was there. And this is the kind of information that parents need to know. And again, a lot of people were also saying things like, we used to have bullets in school and pocket knives and guns in our cars, and, it wasn't that big of a deal, and we'd show each other bullets that we'd bring to school and this, that, and the other, and no one really cared. What I find interesting is that the same person making the complaint is continuing to talk about how none of this was reported by the administration or the district to any parents, which shouldn't surprise anybody because that's exactly what the school district does on a constant basis, is not communicate with people. At the exact same time, they rationalize their own participation in the school district by, of course, continuing to send their children while stoking the flames of already existing division and a lack of safety in these environments, and then, again, continuing to participate in said environments. So, if you don't want problems in the environment, don't attend the environment. Here was another post that they made. They said, quote, same person, the number of adults attempting to rationalize the discovery of a bullet in a third grade classroom is deeply concerning. While it may be perceived as merely a bullet by some, it represents a far more significant issue for my 8-year-old, who has been instructed to report any suspicious items. The fact that a teacher chose to disregard this incident by placing the bullet in her pocket and continuing with her day is indicative of a failure to prioritize my child's safety and security. I would agree with that. Again, a teacher ignoring it is also a problem too. They went on and they said this situation highlights the school's inability to adhere to its own safety protocols. How can I be assured that a thorough investigation took place and that all students were safe when the principal was unaware that my son was the one who reported the bullet. The lack of communication from the teacher raises questions about the integrity of the investigation. If the teacher was not fully informed about the incident, how can we trust that the investigation was comprehensive? As long as excuses are made for these educators, I will continue to advocate for the well-being of my children," unquote. That last part I find laughable. While, none of this was properly investigated and no one was communicated with, and I don't think that these places are safe, I will continue to advocate for the well-being of my children. By doing what? Sending them right back into the meat grinder. And sending them right back into the same environment where you have all of these concerns about safety, security, and communication. And that if you advocate for that while still sending your children, then nothing bad will happen to you or your children. Is that what you actually believe? Again, these people are out to lunch. Now here's the actual explanation as to what apparently happened. And again, I guess this was a communicated message from the district out to people. It says, a Marshall teacher reported to the school principal that bullets were found on the floor, bullets plural, were found on the floor in the classroom. The safety team immediately investigated, including a thorough search. It was quickly determined that a student wore a jacket to school that belonged to another family member. The bullets had fallen out of the jacket that had been previously worn to a hunting trip, unquote. Again, it's a non-issue. It just continues to amaze me that these individuals, again, leap before they look. They make judgments about endless things, of course, before gathering all of the information. And then at the exact same time, they complain about everybody and the environment and any lack of communication, which again, the district is well known for, and yet they still send their children. This is, again, this is the massive disconnect that continues to exist. It continues to blow me away. It couldn't be more obvious that you have no business sending your children if your concerns were actually valid. So you either have them and they're legit, and then, of course, you stop sending your children, which is the right thing to do, or you just get on social media, start complaining about a number of different things without all the facts at hand, and then people start criticizing your take, and you're surprised as to why. In fact, in another post, completely unrelated, but on the same board, there was an individual, again, complimenting the fact that the LifeWise program might possibly be showing up to the school district here, the local school district. And a lot of parents are excited about that. Again, right to religious instruction exists here in the state of Ohio. And again, students can leave elected classes or elective classes if they want to, or leave lunch, depending on how it gets worked out with the district, if in fact it ends up showing up at the district. And then they'll receive LifeWise instruction. Again, this is a very good thing. The problem is that it's a decision like this that causes all of the dummies to come out of the woodwork. One of the very first comments was from this older lady, and she basically just said, separation of church and state. That's all she said. And then I got in the comments and I said, you're all stupid. I said, you don't even know what that means. So once I read her post, I instantly thought, okay, I know I've talked about what the real definition of separation of church and state actually means, that of course it's not a law. It doesn't exist in any legal document in the United States. It's not in the Constitution, Bill of Rights, etc., etc. But in fact, the separation of church and state was a warning against corruption. It doesn't mean taking Jesus and the Bible out of school. It says that if you do, you're likely to become corrupted. And if you force it on people, you're also likely to be corrupted. So there needs to be a balance. But at the exact same time, I read that post and I thought, okay, I'm going to put this out on Substack and clearly define this for people. So that's what I did. So again, on Tuesday, there will be a Substack out. It'll be the last one probably for this year, having to do with just that. Again, people, they just shout taglines instead of actually looking anything up, which is beyond disgusting. But unfortunately, that's the brainwashed culture we live in. And people believe that if they just scream something loud enough, then they must be correct about it. So either way, that'll be on the americanclassroom.substack.com on Tuesday morning if you're interested in checking that one out. Okay, jab-related stuff. Number of things here. Let me get into this one. This is interesting, although not surprising. This was from the website The Sentinel, and it was titled, Pfizer Hid Vaccine Deaths, Research Team Alleges. It says, during the clinical trials for its COVID-19 vaccine, pharmaceutical giant Pfizer has hidden 2 deaths, including one in Kansas, which researchers allege would have revealed potentially dangerous side effects to the vaccine. It says, over the last year and a half, a team of researchers volunteering for the Daily Clout, a nonprofit news outlet, including physicians, a businessman, and a former United States Army intelligence officer, poured through thousands of pages of documents relating to the study and found that Pfizer had failed to report the deaths of 2 women, one in Kansas and one in Georgia, during the trial. It says not only did they fail to report them, but they had, in fact, apparently actively covered them up. So here's what it says, and they show a timeline chart of this, which again is absolutely heartbreaking. But again, this is an individual who was participating in the actual shot trial. Now, why a person would do that is beyond me. But either way, it says the following here on this chart. It was titled Subject 1114150 from Alliance for Multi-Specialty Research, LLC, Newton, Kansas. 63-year-old white female participant in Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine trial, C4591001. It says death not publicly disclosed at the time of vaccine approval. Here was the timeline. On August 18th of 2020, she took the first dose. On September 8th of 2020, the next month, of course, less than a month later, she took the second dose. And then just over a month later after that, on October 19th of 2020, she died. It says emergency contact informed clinical site of death on 19th of October 2020. And then it says 37 days passed before the death was first recorded officially in CRF on November 25th of 2020. It says the data cutoff date was November 14th regarding this particular study. Emergency use authorization application was submitted by Pfizer on November 20th of 2020. And then again, it basically just says that it wasn't recorded until, of course, the end of November. And the cause of death based on the autopsy was sudden cardiac death. So again, first shot in August, second shot in September, died in October. What's sad and interesting about this is this would indicate as to why when 2021 rolled around, they were telling people to wait 4 to 6 months between your shots. These people are receiving these shots one a month in closer proximity to one another, and they're dropping over. There's no way that that was the only individual, let alone the second individual. Here's what it says about the second individual. It says subject 11201050 from Meridian Clinical Research, LLC, Savannah, Georgia. 58-year-old white female participant in Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine trial, C4591001. Death not publicly disclosed at the time of vaccine approval. Dose number 1 for this person was on August 4th of 2020. And then they took their second dose the same month on August 27th, rather, again, of the same year. And then they died November 7th of that same year, 2020. It says November 7th, 2020, notification of death in CRF, husband informed clinical site of death on November 7th of 2020. And then 26 days passed before they finally recorded the death. And the emergency use authorization went into place before they were officially recording their own death of this individual who again participated in the trial. Subject died in her sleep. It says no autopsy was performed. 2 shots in the same month. And again, emergency use authorization wasn't approved by the FDA until December 11th of 2020. Now again, given the timing of the shots and the close proximity, of course, from shot 1 to shot 2, look what they're doing in Walmarts and pharmacies all across the nation. come on in and get, again, 2 shots at the exact same time. Hell, get 4 at the exact same time. Make sure you get boosted and double up on all that immunity. Remember, you're a cell phone that's losing its charge. If you don't charge yourself back up, bad things are going to happen. I can't believe people keep falling for this. It's amazing. You go into a Walmart, you get 2 shots. I mean, you're dead in the parking lot. I can't believe it. Here's another one. This is from slaynews.com. It says, red alert issued for excess deaths still skyrocketing in COVID-vaxxed children. This is from the 12th of December. It says, a world-renowned data expert, Edward Dowd, of course, reveals excess deaths are continuing to skyrocket in children who received COVID mRNA vaccines, quote-unquote, according to an alarming warning from leading Wall Street data analyst Ed Dowd. Excess deaths are still accelerating and no sign of slowing down. In fact, now that I'm reading this, I'm also finding it interesting that nobody asked whether or not the Millie High School, Houston, Texas student was jabbed or not. I mean, how many shots did the guy take? Did the kid take? 15-year-old kid who got hit by the train. Did he fall over dead because he had a heart attack and then the slow-moving train crushed him because, he was already dead before the train hit him? Can we do an autopsy on that? Can we pull the medical records? Again, he discusses in this particular article, Dowd does, the business of the percentages of more deaths increasing and being higher than expected. So in 2020, there were 9% fewer deaths than expected. In 2021, 7% fewer deaths than expected. And then in 2022, there were 16% more deaths than expected. And then in 2023, 22% more deaths than expected. So again, the long-term ramifications, of course, of these shots, as we know, certainly among those who continue to take them, is not good. Again, even my mom was telling me not that long ago, she was getting her hair done, and a woman came in and sat down next to her and was talking with her hairdresser about how sick she has been and her husband has been and how they're up to date on all their shots and they keep taking shots and they can't figure out why they keep getting sick. And I mean, again, these people have lost their minds. They just keep getting injected thinking they can inject themselves into good health. Again, in this article, numerous numbers again get brought up as far as the death totals are concerned. 7 million, 15 million, 17 million. Me personally, globally speaking, I think it's way higher than that, but it does say 29 to 60 million people disabled globally. And then it says, quote, and then there are injuries. If you take 18% of the vaccinated just using Pfizer trial data, so that again, this could be money, but we could get a range of, at the high end, of 900 million, 500 million at the low end as far as injured are concerned. It says 500 million to 900 million who had an injury that has not disabled them. Again, finally, I would say this too, and this is a separate story here, but this would be a very good thing. And unfortunately, in the political game and certainly in the lawyer legal game, in order to get rid of something like shots, for example, all shots, all vaccinations, quote unquote, you have to hinge it on a singular subject. So in this case, they're hinging the possible childhood vaccine schedule and getting rid of it and hinging it, of course, on autism rates. Now, they could hinge it on anything. They could hinge it on death, injury, a million other things that these bioweapon shots do, not just COVID, but all shots. But even so, if they're hooking it to autism, and that's the easiest to prove, certainly from a literature standpoint at this stage of the game, then if that's what they have to do, that's what they have to do. Again, this was from Reuters, which again should tell you something, hard left-wing organization, I believe owned by the Rothschilds, if I'm not mistaken. And it says Trump to discuss ending childhood vaccination program with RFK Jr., and I'm sure vice versa. It says U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, in an interview published on Thursday, said that he will be talking to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his nominee to run the Department of Health and Human Services, about ending childhood vaccination programs. When asked if he would sign off if Kennedy decided to end childhood vaccination programs, Trump told Time magazine, quote, we're going to have a big discussion. The autism rate is at a level that nobody ever believed possible. If you look at things that are happening, there's something causing it, unquote. When asked if the discussion could result in his administration getting rid of some vaccinations, Trump said, "It could if I think it's dangerous, if I think they are not beneficial, but I don't think it's going to be very controversial in the end," unquote. I completely agree with that. And again, I understand people would say, well, why would he get rid of it after he got done pushing the COVID shots and Operation Warp Speed, quote unquote, and that entire thing? Again, I've been over it before. But the operation that's taking place now has to be a multi-generational operation. We just happen to be living through the time of this where this is moving in a better direction. Again, when you have numerous individuals all signing a petition saying that RFK Jr. has no business being the head of HHS and that he shouldn't even be considered, let alone be allowed to get away with anything that he wants to get away with, so to speak, and push whatever quackery that they think that he's pushing, when in fact all he's attempting to do is get poison away from human beings so that they stop taking this poison. But again, unfortunately, the fairy tale has been believed by so many individuals that when even a small portion and even a large portion of that particular fairy tale starts to crack, then the entire false story falls down on top of everybody's heads. But again, because this story comes from Reuters, they then spend the rest of the article talking about how removing vaccination, and of course they get some quotes from some knuckleheads who believe the fairy tale that removing vaccinations is going to cause an uptick in all this illness, and look, this is, all this illness is now caused because there's no vaccinations, and this is absolutely unbelievable, and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be completely impossible unless they find other ways of poisoning people. If shots are not available, and more exemptions are allowed for people to take, then that's always a good thing. But if people keep taking shots, and they keep getting sick, and they're looking at, again, their peers or other family members, and they're saying, but you're not taking any shots, why aren't you getting sick? They'll say, well, it's probably because I'm not taking any shots. And again, unfortunately, there's the shedding aspect of everything and electromagnetism. And again, keeping these shots in and around the public population here is really the most detrimental part of all of this, because they have to keep that going because that's how illness spreads, certainly from the jabbed to the unjabbed. So yeah, eliminating these shots would be absolutely massive. But again, if people still wanted them and they were still foolish enough to actually still want them, the question would become whether or not they would still be available for those individuals to take them if they were foolish enough to still take them. That's going to be an interesting road to cross, no doubt about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening as always. I'll catch you on Wednesday, and there will be a new Substack out on Tuesday. Feel free and check that out too if you're interested. I will link it in the description below of the next episode on Wednesday. And with that said, I'll see you then. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.